Welcome to the Daily Objective, day 140 of the war in Israel. I'm joined by Daniel. Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
Hey Razi, I'm good, although exhausted in the last couple of days for some reason.
Have you been spending much time thinking about Rashida Tlaib? Because that'll usually.
That's all I do, and that's why I can't sleep.
So, Rashida Tlaib has been censured by the House, and she's back in the news. She's often in the news, so it's not that surprising. But I want to talk about well, it's a good sign on the one hand that she's censured, but the fact that she's in the House is something is a point of concern, and I want to just talk about the general issue there. So we're Ayn Rand Center UK, in UK politics, views such as Rashida Tlaib's are not that rare. Britain has had members of parliament, sitting members, former members, still has members of parliament openly calling for the destruction of Israel. I don't know that there are members of parliament calling for the destruction of any other country, but they do call for the destruction or dismantling of Israel. And of course, the dismantling of Israel can only happen in one way. It is by killing, everybody there, or at least all the Jews there. So it's a way around the restrictions on speech in this country to talk about the dismantling of Israel. We had a leader of the opposition who was openly anti-Semitic and openly pro-terrorism, and worked for the Iranian government as a talking head on their propaganda channel. But the U.S. is different. The U.S. has always been different. The U.S. was created because people wanted something different. People wanted a free country. People, the American dream has been, was is a product of the bad ideas that have always ruled Europe, and those ideas are becoming more and more acceptable in the US, and we see the results of that. You know, I'm 41 years old. I still remember in my lifetime and as an adult, uh, people calling themselves socialists could not be elected. They were unelectable. You were unelectable in the US if you self-identified as a socialist. Now there are sitting members of the House who call themselves socialists. Maybe actually at least one in the Senate as well. So the U.S. has gone downhill. I still think it's better than anywhere else. It's gone downhill in whatever is supposedly on the other side, because the political right is also, has pretty much given up on advocacy for free markets. The one presidential candidate who actually has a semi-rational foreign policy is electorally irrelevant. She's not probably going to win a single state, let alone have any chance of becoming president. So Rashida Tlaib, to coin a phrase, didn't happen in a vacuum, but she happened, and she's there, and she's she's a symbol of, I think, maybe the best symbol of the worst symbol of where America is going. Daniel, your initial thoughts about Rashida Tlaib before we go into some of the details.
Well, I always hear about her, and yeah, it's crazy. Something like someone like her, yeah, like you said, gets into power. Luckily, we don't really have such a thing here in Slovakia, or at least yet. Possibly because we are still somewhat of a backward country, so we have different things to deal with than talk about the destruction of Israel. Uh, but well, something that's interesting in American politics is the fact that you have a lot of these like local elections for the representatives, which allows people like maybe like more radical people in more, let's say, extremist places like Rashida Tlaib to actually getting to the House of Representatives. Uh, uh, Not sure how much I can say just about her. I have many things to say about what she done specifically in recent. We even have even have a clip if you want to play that. You're muted.
Yeah, we're gonna play a clip of her, responding to the vote. But yeah, actually, you know what? Let's play that now and see her response and what we can make of it.
Let me just ask you because I have two clips. Do you want with the silence or without the long silence that happens?
Uh, well, the one I sent you, the one from MSNBC, which
Yeah, but she has like a 15 seconds pause. Do you wanna play
oh,
with the?
yeah, I think the pause is
Okay,
important. The pause is intentional.
all right.
I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. Why? What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all.
You're muted again.
Oh, I'm muted again. Yeah, of course the crying, the playing the victim. This is something you would expect from somebody who supports the Palestinians. They were not playing the victim on October 7th because because it would have been more difficult to sell. So they were celebrating their victory, and now they are um, crying crying on stage and saying Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings. And of course, viewers of this channel will know if you truly do acknowledge the fact that all human beings have free will, then yes, the Palestinian people, if you treat them as human beings, uh, the way you would respond to October 7th or to their previous attempts to pursue their national mission would have been military action and much stronger military action. But no, she cries about the children. She doesn't say a word, of course, about the people who brought the children, who put the children in that position, because those are the evil people that a good person would fight against, rather than the people who somebody would side with if they have any sense of decency.
Yeah, so when she's talking about it in a, very tribalistic way. She does consider herself Palestinian American. I believe she's a child of two Palestinian immigrants. I'm wondering if she's considered a refugee. Uh,
Of course, she's
but
considered a refugee.
yeah, one thing I would point out, because many people are saying she's a fake crying. I don't think she is. And I think if you say she is fair crying, I think you're letting her get away with it. Because you think it's just some sort of political move. I think she's actually like so like with people like this, I think at some point they're just so devoid of reality that and I think I've heard this something similar happen at the and I can't remember the name of her. But there was like one person who also like really cried for the Palestinian, but had basically like no reaction about the October 7th. And with people like this, you have to acknowledge like Ayn Rand often talks about how, your emotions are reflections of basically your beliefs. And if you have no emotional reaction to October 7th and you cry for anything that happened to the Palestinians, something is completely warped in your mind. Basically, your hatred for Israel is overcoming any sort of, empathy, even let's say, even if you consider Israel the worst state ever, even for the Israeli children, if you don't even cry for them, your mind is, like I said, completely warped. And I hear that sometimes. I mean, I'm not sure if you know about him, the nephew of Cenk Uygur, Hassan Piker, oftentimes talks about the settler childrens, basically that even the childrens in the settlements are basically like colonialists and deserve to die, basically, as well as all other settlers.
Yeah, and I bet he's calling for a ceasefire now. That's something we often talk about, and we'll keep talking about, that the people who call for a ceasefire do so in the same breath as they call for genocide, as we saw in the slogans that were projected onto Big Ben a couple of days ago in the UK. Yeah, she's so she was actually, in October, there was a report by an organization called, let me just make sure I get it right, Canary Mission. Canary Mission is an organization in uh, well, I'll read their Twitter bio. It's Canary Mission exposes hatred and anti-Semitism on college campuses and beyond, and they had a report talking about her ties to Hamas. One of the things that it said in the tweet is she was working with Hamas activist Saleh Sarsour, and who co-hosted a campaign event for her. So yeah, there's people who vote for someone like that, or people who are okay with someone like that in parliament. Um, that is what they're okay with. This is I don't know if they're unaware of the specific details of everything she does, but you don't need to be aware that she had an event, a campaign event hosted by a Hamas activist. You need to listen to her talk, and you need to listen to her talk before October 7th about Israel. She there was the whole incident where she wanted to visit her grandma in somewhere in Israel, or in Palestinian controlled territories. Israel wouldn't allow her. Then they allowed her. Then she changed her mind, basically doing a whole PR stunt against Israel. So yeah, and again, we look at someone like that, and we need to look at them not with anger at the fact that they exist, because bad people will always be around, but the fact that they can reach such prominence, the fact that this is not somebody who needs to hide their views when dealing with polite society, but is actually elected by what you would hope is a polite society. So yeah, Rashida Tlaib is one of those people who should have terrified us before October 7th, but post October 7th, again, we have no excuse to look at someone like that and say, why is this person, who is voting for somebody like this? Why is this person considered a legitimate part of the US political spectrum?
Yeah, I always make the point of that's why I'm always struggling to like really get angry with politicians, because understand that ultimately it is the people behind them. It is the people who either some rich people who support their campaigns, or the just your average voters who actually get them into Congress. I mean, it's not like if she would go away if something happened, and I'm not saying something should happen. It's not like if she went away that those people would now elect someone who's pro-Israel. I mean, they either would elect someone who is even more, as crazy as it sounds, I mean, I want to say pro-Palestinian, but with someone with Rashida Tlaib, it is pro-Hamas. It's yeah, we cannot like shy away from it. They would elect someone who would be in a similar way. That's why it's really important to, like I say, not focus too much on the politicians, but what ideas do they represent? What can we do about challenging those ideas specifically, rather than just calling them out?
Yeah, there's a few things I want to read out from this report, and we'll put a link in the description. But I do want to tie it a little bit to UK politics. Next week, we will be talking about UK politics. I don't know how much, but potentially a lot. There's a by-election in Rochdale. Rochdale is, of course, we mentioned it yesterday. That's the place where the most famous of the child abuse rings by local Muslim communities happened. There's the Labor candidate was kicked out of the Labor Party, but after he was already on the ballot, so he's going to run, but Labor is not going to endorse him, and he's running against George Galloway, who was probably the most notorious Israel hater in the UK, and um, yeah, so these pockets exist throughout the UK, throughout Europe, and of course they're at least when it comes to hating Jews, they're not out of place because there's been a tradition in Europe of hating Jews and of anti-Semitism and of uh, genocide against Jews. But again, we look at the U.S. and we look at the U.S. with um, some hope, hope that is we're at least from my perspective, I'm losing, as every day goes by. People are talking in the chat about, this is parts of Detroit and it's Dearborn, Michigan, which is the jihadist capital of the U.S. But um, the rest of the U.S. is kind of okay with it to an extent. Again, they censured her in the House, so that's a positive step. But she's not there's no consensus there. I think it was 22 Democrats, right, who voted against her. So most Democrats didn't vote against her. Most Democrats are okay with a terrorist supporting member of their party representing them in Congress. So yeah, as a sign of the culture, I think it's clear where what Rashida Tlaib symbolizes, and yeah, Daniel, let's get your thoughts on that before we go into some of the details in the report.
What specifically?
Just generally, what it means, although we have been talking about it, what it means culturally, that this vote was pretty much split down party lines, although, we need to give credit to the Democrats who voted against her. Israel was used to be a non-controversial topic in U.S. politics. Both parties, this was one of the few things they agreed on completely, supporting Israel. There's no question about that. In Europe, of course, that's never been the case. But yeah, we basically we were seeing the Europeanization of U.S. politics, and with it the Islamic elements as well that we see more and more of in Europe.
Yeah, one thing we've definitely seen is this sort of tribalization of sort of both sides. So I'm hoping it's the case of this, Democrats standing up for Democrats just because they're Democrats, not because of this ideological line. Because I believe still, I'd say maybe even majority of Democrats are still somewhat pro-Israel, even if they might be, you know, well, no one's gonna be fully pro-Israel, but I think especially, well, something I wanted to talk about is this upcoming presidential election. It really seems like it might be decided based on Israel, and we've seen even Rashida Tlaib calling out Biden for being too pro-Israel and basically telling her voters to don't vote for Biden in the presidential elections because of the topic of Israel. So I'm really interested to see how much the this vote will be decided based on Israel. And yeah, I guess that will be my main point. I really hope we are still in this sort of partisan lines, and that's why they uphold her, or that's why they try to, and not. It's hard to me imagine that so many Democrats would actually agree with her position. As bad as Democrats are generally on Israel, they're still, I believe they are still not at the level of Rashida Tlaib.
Oh yeah, that I would agree with, but it is always the more principled people who move the direction of a movement, and that is true whether or not the principles are good principles. That is how a Jeremy Corbyn could easily get elected in the Labour Party. I believe he would get elected today as well as at least the leader of the party, because yeah, he's a more genuine representative of their principles. So here are some of the key findings, and again, if you can read the whole report on the Canary Mission website. So some of their key findings were that so it says Canary Mission can now confirm that Rashida Tlaib. Sorry, wait. This is an update from November. I want to read the original first. So Canary Mission can confirm that Rashida Tlaib has extensive fundraising ties to Hamas supporters. She employed no less than 3 Hamas-linked activists to fundraise for her 2018 election campaign, one of whom has spent 8 months in prison for his alleged connections to Hamas. This is not something you don't know when you hire someone, certainly for a political campaign, because you know you're under unbelievable scrutiny in politics. Your opponents will try to find anything they can against you. So if you hire somebody who was in prison, it should be somebody who was in prison for something that you think is right. For example, if you run a campaign, pro-freedom campaign, you might hire somebody who was in prison for standing up to tyranny. And if you're running a pro-terrorist campaign, you might hire somebody who was in prison for terrorism. So I'll keep reading. Tlaib additionally used a pro-terror
just quickly, let me step in. Maybe she was just hiring UNRWA employees, and they just happen to be Hamas. I mean, you never know.
Yeah. So this report and the update on the report is before the recent UNRWA scandals came out. Although people knew what UNRWA was back then, but now it's a bit more difficult to deny. So Tlaib additionally used a pro-terror Facebook page, PAC USA, to raise funds for her 2018 congressional campaign. Tlaib gave the founder of PAC USA the position of chairman of the finance committee for Rashida Tlaib for Congress. He used it to promote 12 fundraisers in 8 states, entirely with her support. In 2015, Tlaib co-founded the Detroit-based anti-American, anti-Israel, pro-terror hate group Black for Palestine. A co-founder used the group to conduct activism with members of the Marxist-Leninist Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Yeah, we've mentioned the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine a few times here on our shows. We don't mention them much because they're not as big as they used to be, but they're a terrorist organization that has been around for a while. They murdered a member of an Israeli minister about 20 years ago in his hotel room. Yeah, so that's some of the stuff that there is on her. Again, there's more there, and again, like these are details that you can say, all right, I voted for someone, I didn't know all this. This report came out after I voted for them. Well, yeah, but you heard her talk, and if you hear her talk, you know where she stands, and this is not a departure from what she says. It is consistent. It's consistent behavior, hiring people with links to terrorism.
Yeah, and you really can't as a voter, you really cannot escape the responsibility of, you are voting in who is representing you. Again, just to bring up example of Slovakia, we just vote for parties and we pretty much just get whatever they pick to be on the candidate. We have a certain amount of choice. You can circle certain candidates to get them up front, but it's usually whoever is in the top whatever, it's who actually gets in. So you can somewhat try to escape the responsibility, but no, this is your district, this is who you vote for, and yeah, you have to, anyone who actually votes for her, you have to realize this is actually what you're doing. You're actively supporting not only destruction of Israel, but I mean it's gonna come here at some point. I mean Israel is really a gate for this sort of Islamists to come basically to West. I mean, they will not stop at Israel. I mean, they will not stop at, just taking back all of West Bank or taking back Gaza. They will go for all of Israel, and then they will go further because it's not about some sort of rationality. There is no it's not about life for them. It's not about prospering. If it was, they could have had it a long time ago. It is ultimately about destroying West and whatever it represents. And it just happens to be that what is represented in the Middle East as the West is currently Israel.
Yeah, and when we in the West stick our heads in the sand, the results, we see them. America knew of the problem of Islamic terrorism. They knew about bin Laden. They had opportunities to kill bin Laden. They didn't. They didn't. Clinton famously didn't kill him because 200 civilians would have died in that attack. So he didn't kill bin Laden and 200 civilians, and got 9/11 as his reward for that. And Israel the same. We've been talking about how Israel would always have these pinpoint responses, would go on operations, even when they went on widespread operations, after many rockets, if it was one or two or a couple dozen, they wouldn't do anything. If it was a few days of rockets, they would do a bit more. But it was always with the stated goal of not destroying Hamas, because all Hamas does is fire rockets and do the occasional terrorist attack. And Israel is continuing that today, by the way. Yesterday there was a terrorist attack. Somebody was murdered. And it came from the West Bank, and we still see nothing of significance being done in the West Bank. And these people, whether it's Hamas leaders, Hamas operatives, or Hamas representatives in the West, like Rashida Tlaib, see that as a sign of weakness, and as a sign of weakness, and as a sign that they should keep going and keep doing what they're doing because it is working. And of course, with that 30-second clip that we saw, the crying, the language about children, she's targeting Western sensibilities, Western sensitivities. She's very much speaking to Westerners in ways that I don't know if like terrorists, the terrorists that she supports, she speaks differently in Arabic. But yeah. Anyway, we have a few minutes left. Let's quickly read some of the updates that they had on the Canary mission.
Yeah, let me just quickly say something because you reminded me of the Arabic. Everyone should check out Arabic Wikipedia on October 7th. It's something completely different than what English version says. Like it almost makes no mention of like terrorist attack, terrorism, or anything like that. You can use like the feature to translate it from Arabic to English, but it's really crazy to see.
Yeah, and I saw this tweet about a month ago, which I also read out, but I'm not going to try to find it now, of somebody who's Los Angeles based, saying, look, you have to understand that in the Arab world, October 7th, because this was around the restaurant called October 7th that opened in Jordan, and he said, you have to understand, in the Arab world, we don't see it the way you see it. We see it as a victory, which is a telling moment. The Arabs pretend now that they're concerned about children. They're not. They're concerned about not being able to murder Jews as easily as they did before, and not having that recognized as the great victory that it was. So just from this report, quickly, other key findings. So I think this is similar to something I already read, but it is an update that they have here, which is that the Black for Palestine activist group that Tlaib co-founded in 2015 worked publicly with terrorists from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine no less than 8 times from 2016 to 2020. Okay, there's more in there. We don't have time to read it, but I do think it's important for people to look closely at these people, at people like Rashida Tlaib, who are now prominent within Western countries. We've talked about the enemy within on our shows many times, and we need to take note before it is too late. On the reality show, we'll talk about whether or not Hamas has an enemy within, whether or not there is any genuine opposition among the Palestinians to Islamic terrorism. And yes, Bonnie, the report isn't in the chat. You will see it later in the description. Thanks, Daniel. I see we're running late, so thanks. We will see you all.
Have we thanked the super chatters?
Oh, I did not thank the super chatters.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan Honig, for $3.99, and thank you, Bonnie, for 99¢.
And I will say that the Daily Objective tomorrow will be a debate between me and Jonathan about Netanyahu. So that is an episode that I hope you will all watch. The
gonna be
question
pro?
will be, what?
Who's gonna be pro Netanyahu?
Well, the question will be, is should he resign or be fired, or and so, and I am on the side that yes, he should go. He should have gone a long time ago. He should go today. It will be interesting. So make sure you tune in for that and stay tuned for the reality show in about 90 seconds. Thanks, Daniel. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.